Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. This is our monthly Food for Thought series. It's our monthly educational series where we get to learn more about wellness and science for both the people and the planet. So this month we will be hearing from Dr. Tegan Reeves, who is both a guide at Porcupine Creek and a specialist on the corporate wellness science team. So in her presentation this month, she's going to cover the 5 key areas that influence well-being at work and how to fan those flames in a healthy way, in a good way. So at the end of the session, she's going to hopefully provide you with the tools to help you recognize the core components of workplace wellness and how to facilitate the best atmosphere to optimize it. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tegan.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to see everybody. I don't see the Lanai team yet, so I'm not sure, Michael, if you want to check in with Jody.
Ian.
We're here.
I think Ian. Yeah.
We're all here.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. All right. Well, then let's get started. So I really like starting with quotes, so I'm starting with a quote. This is something that has been on my mind for a long time. This idea that when we are preparing, maybe we're overperforming even, that our candle is burning at both ends. And when my father used to say this poem to me, I used to buck at it because I felt like, but I love what I'm doing and I'm excited about what I'm doing. And we are finding out more and more that there is such thing as burning out. A recent study by the American Psychological Association tells us that almost 90% of Americans are reporting burnout, that over 90% of Americans, says Deloitte, are having some kind of stress or negativity at work that is unmanageable and that's impacting how they work. So this is a big deal. And this is something that the World Health Organization is classifying not as a disease, but as a phenomenon, an occupational phenomenon. And I think that one of the new insights, the New England Journal of Medicine is a prestigious journal, and they've been talking a lot about burnout. And I think it's really important as we look at this to know that it's manifesting in individuals. We talk about burnout at the individual level, but that it's really rooted in systems and in the environment. And so that's what brings us to looking at our entirety of our wellness and well-being. So we know that wellness is our objective measures of health, and well-being is a little bit more subjective. And this happens in and out of work. This happens at home. We have personal factors that impact it. And so often this is the first place that we go to when we start talking about burnout. So at work, especially when we're talking about wellness, we've seen lots of studies that suggest that people who are well, workers and employees who are well, are more productive, they have higher sales, and they're more creative. These are just 3 of many different things that we see when we have high ratings of wellness and well-being. We also see that wellness and well-being specifically can explain the variance in things like job satisfaction, commitment, task performance, and creative performance. So these are all key metrics in business. And if we know that higher productivity and sales and creativity, more satisfaction, commitment, and again, creative performance, task performance is all impacted with well-being, then we think, well, we do well-being programs. And if we offer well-being programs, then it'll improve. So a pretty large randomized control trial over 18 months with a large warehouse business that had 30,000 employees said, okay, let's test this. So they had over 160 work sites. They gave an 8-week long well-being program, and they did see a positive impact on engaging in regular exercise. People that did the well-being program engaged in more regular exercise afterwards, and that they intended to lose weight. So that's a positive impact. out of the 80 measures, there were only 2 significantly positive impacts. So they looked at wellness, they looked at subjective well-being, they looked at work performance, and this intensive wellness program really only impacted regular exercise and weight management. It didn't impact these other things. So I think this is really important, especially as we start to think about our own situations and how passionate we are. It didn't work. Just a wellness program offered to employees didn't work. And the reason why can be a number of things. But one of the things that we'll talk about is that these programs were operating on the periphery. It was offering information about nutrition and fitness or mindfulness and yoga, but it was just happening in the small intersection of life and work, or wellness and work. And what we also want to do when we're covering this is look at what's at the core of this. And so in psychology, we have a number of theories and studies that start to look at how we're doing and how we can operate best or most adaptively operate at the core of who we are. At work, in industrial and organizational psychology, there's these 5 factors that are often talked about in many different interventions or correlational work around what happens best at work. They're learning, belonging, how we are engaged or what we think we are contributing, the work or the organizational culture, and then what kind of resourcing we have. If we look at this from the personal core, we have then these 5 areas that can really impact how well we're doing. The first I'm calling curiosity. This is also learning. The second is connection. This is a sense of belonging in and outside of work. The third is purpose. Our attitude and our attention, as we all know, is also very, very important. So these are all highly connected. And instead of operating on the periphery, really talking about well-being at work and what is going to fuel and drive us. So I've taken some of this research and looking at it in these 4 quadrants: connection, purpose, focus, and learning. So really, those are just 2 scales. The first is passion, and the second is growth. And taking a moment to reflect a little bit, and I will give you an opportunity to kind of think about what passion and growth means to you. And as we go through these next few slides, I'd love to utilize the chat. I would really love it if we can engage a little bit. So I'm giving you a little bit of a warning as we move forward. I'm going to ask a few questions, and it would really mean a lot to see some activity in the chat. So moving into these 4 areas, if we talk about growth, we're talking about learning environments. We see lots of different studies and researchers that have evidence around a learning culture. Some of the strongest around work is a Burschen study. This was actually done in 2010. Over 40,000 employees. What they found was the strongest indicator of positive outcomes with different organizations was a learning environment. We see this in individuals with growth mindset, which many of us are very familiar with. Dweck and others since have talked about the importance of a mindset that has a specific task orientation, not a global sense of worth, and that is within our control. And then Valorand talks a lot about passion. So if we have high passion and we have high growth, what does that look like? This is what Seligman would call flourishing. This is where we have a flame. This is where we're really doing our best work and what is keeping us going. This is, again, a space that we can move in and out of, but we call flourishing. So in these 4 spaces within passion, we've got connection and purpose. That looks like feeling like I belong to something. It looks like I contribute to something. I believe in my company. And with learning and growth, we have focus and we have the ability to learn. If I feel like I'm developing and I feel like I'm growing, if I'm able to be really locked in, I'm not distracted all the time. So thinking a little bit about what flourishing is first, we start with high growth and high passion. I'd love to see in the chat, and I'll read it out loud in case not everyone has their chat pulled up, but what comes up for you with flourishing? And maybe in one of these areas, what's a sentiment that feels like something you could remind yourself or something that keeps your flames burning? Yeah, excitement. Thanks, Vinny. Challenging problems. So that fits within learning, that we're able to challenge ourselves. Working alongside other people who are just as passionate. I think that has a strong place within connection, feeling like we're connected and working together, and then learning new skills, being able to develop and grow, connecting with other collaborators who are excited about the challenges that are in front of us, being a part of something bigger than ourselves. I love that. Yeah, hopefully we have all 4 of them. That's when the flame is really burning. And sometimes we don't, and that's also okay. And I love this, seeing evidence that we've helped someone. So these are really good reminders, and these buckets, and I love it. We're connecting to deep motivation, and it gives us wings. I love that too. So when and thank you, Ian, creating impactful solutions, the meaningful contribution, I think, is really important. These are all small reminders, things that we can come back to, maybe even making a list. I have a folder of emails that people have sent me when I am feeling like I'm falling out of one of these areas. I go back to. We're going to have a few more opportunities to kind of explore what's happening when we feel like we're not in the flames space. So let's try to understand that a little bit more. So if we have low passion, but we're in high growth, this is a dangerous area. I liken this to just timber. If we've got some really great wood, but we don't have a flame on it, the wood is just sitting there. It's not doing anything. In industrial and organizational psychology, many people call this sector coping, that it is an area where we're continuing to learn and continuing to grow, but the passion isn't there and it's missing. Amy Edmondson suggests that this is a lot of the space that we fall into when we don't have a psychologically safe environment, when we're feeling like we are needing to conform or sometimes compete. I think that maybe sometimes competition can fuel us, but thinking about when those times where we have lost some of that passion, some of that sense of meaning, and we're in high growth, that those can be areas where we often see people shifting into burning out. And so what can we do about that? Let's go to how we can improve our passion, right? If we're low in passion and high in growth, then passion is the area that we can start to improve. Before I put any of my ideas on the board, there's an open opportunity to start throwing some ideas in the chat. When you're, and we should say here, all of us have been in all of these quadrants, so we've all been through it. When you're feeling low on passion, what are some things that some of you do to try to increase passion so that you can keep up with the growth and the learning? Going back to the basics. I like that. Yeah. So looking outside of my workplace, Kelly says, what are some other people doing? And that, I think, goes into learning, right? It helps us continue to feel like we're growing, even if it's outside of work. Reconnecting with joy, thinking about childlike joy, engaging in hobbies, and firing up creativity. Absolutely. Creativity is a huge connection to passion and growth. So let's look in these buckets. Let's start with connection. Thinking about what we can do at work to increase passion, and it really has a lot to do with our sense of belonging. Yes, tapping into ancient wisdom sources. In a road trip, I'll take a road trip. I think you're exactly right. We're remembering why we love what we do here. And so one way to do that is to remember that we are a part of something, that we belong to a group of people, maybe something even bigger than us. Walk and talks are, for me, one of my first go-tos for a source of connection. Being able to, if we're remote, maybe we're walking and talking on the phone, and being able to walk together and connect. So again, thinking about belonging and connecting is really important. This is when we are in high growth and low passion, one of the first things that we tend to do is to shut down all of the spaces where we really can connect, because we have to get the work done. And we go into what we often call silos as individuals. So taking that time to reconnect to nature, to things that we enjoy, and to each other, I think is really helpful. Also, asking to help others. We talk about asking for help a lot, but actually when we're feeling like we're pretty low in passion, one of the things that is really helpful is offering help to others. It improves our sense of belonging and connection, and it's shown in many different ways to help improve our performance. We also have what we call self-affirming. So if we're looking at purpose, our integrity and our values are something that's really, really helpful. There's a study done out of Stanford with a large group of students, Latino and Latina students, and they wrote a very brief paragraph about what they believed, their integrity or their values. And what they found is that for the students who wrote the paragraph, their test scores were significantly higher. And this is what we call self-affirming, taking a moment to sit down and to really say, what are my values, and reconnect to those is really helpful. Connecting to the mission of the organization, and then connecting to your mission. Okay, so we've talked a lot about timber. Let's talk about the spark. So when we're really, really high in passion, but we're not high in growth, this is what a lot of researchers will call fragile thriving. This is also extremely high risk for burnout. Fragile thriving it lasts about as long as a sparkler does. So it's got all of the spark, but it doesn't have the flame. And I think this is talked about less often. So this is when we are in low growth environments where we don't have a lot of learning, we're maybe doing a lot of repetitive work, and or we don't feel like we're growing. So let's do the same. If we're low in growth, what do we do to up our growth, to up our learning environments? I'd love to see in the chat some ideas here. Focus and learning is the two categories that I have in this growth sector. So what sort of things might you do, or might you suggest that we do if we're low in growth? Yeah, team building, maybe taking some courses and furthering our education. I think that's huge, right? That's increasing learning. So finding something that's going to further what you're doing or level up, connecting with like-minded individuals outside of work, but that are in the field. Yeah, finding new learning, a new or learning outlet or track. Journaling, yes, Cora, I love journaling. Journaling is a huge place. Finding inspiration in art. Certainly, these are all spaces that can improve our growth space. One of the places that we do see a lot of research is around focus. So when we are burning out, when we are at the edge of burnout or exhaustion. Oh, I see Jim says, don't wait, initiate the search yourself. And if you can't go and reach out to others who know you. I love that. What do they see as your passions? That's a really great way to help us find growth. So when we go into focus, we're really talking about the lack of focus that we often experience when we're at the edge of burnout. And so this is both a symptom and a cause, right? When we have a disengaged mind, when we are distracted, when we're doing 17 things, that is sometimes because we're close to burning out, but it's also keeping us from really having that wood for our flame. So how do we increase focus? Habit and routine is one of the most solidified in the research ways to increase focus. So when you're feeling frazzled, when you're feeling fried and you want to just kind of step away from your routine, moving towards it is shown over and over to help increase our focus. We also have on this call some great resources in mindfulness and breathing. Jim just wrote the last comment in the chat as well. This is shown to improve focus. This is something that you could add to your daily routine. And I think that Kelly actually had this suggestion for passion as increasing passion, but a geographical reset or stepping outside. Sorry, Kelly, if that wasn't you and I just called you out, but stepping outside of your space, stepping away from the screen, putting yourself and your eyes in a different space is sometimes something that just helps us reset and refocus. Now, when we're talking about learning, I loved a lot of these suggestions for finding a course that can upskill us or a place where we can develop. Remembering that we can also ask for our colleagues and friends and managers to push us. Asking for feedback helps us learn. And sometimes when we need it the most, we want it the least. So just saying the same thing again, leaning into it a little bit and finding space to evaluate. Self-evaluation is always great. I know quite a few people who will have a checklist and they'll check in with themselves after every big task or project that they do. What did I do well? What could I have done better? And I think maybe the most important for me in this space when I'm all spark and no growth is reminding myself that the only way to learn is to get uncomfortable. And so if I'm all spark, it's because I want to stay there because I'm comfortable in it. But to learn, to grow, we have to get uncomfortable. We have to realize that we don't know things and push ourselves just as much as others push us. So we've got our 4x4. We've got space where we understand what the flame is, that we can either spark out with no wood to help us, or we can be a pile of wood and no passion to move us forward. The white space that I tried way too hard to fit into the metaphor, so I'm just going to keep it white. This is when we don't have either. And this happens to all of us and is very, very well linked to burnout. It's low passion and low growth. And most researchers call this boredom. So we know Korn Ferry did a revealing study that showed us that boredom is really the top reason why people leave jobs. Again, it's a symptom. It's a space that we're in, not because of. It's just a place that we reside sometimes. We also have seen many studies linking chronic boredom to depression, anxiety, stress, and insomnia. I will say again that those things are it's a relationship. I don't know that boredom causes these things. It might be a symptom of these things, but it's definitely a signal of burnout. And one of the more useful ways that we can start to think about this is that when we get into boredom, yes, we want to increase passion. Yes, we want to increase growth, but boredom is sometimes a defense mechanism. It's a mechanism of slack. So we're maybe doing something that we're giving ourselves a break. We're not pushing ourselves too hard. We're stepping away. We're kind of ignoring the things that we really find meaningful. So we're taking out the tension. And what we know in industrial and organizational psychology is that tension is actually one of the things that increases both job performance and innovation. So this was a study done in 2018 with a large group of leaders. You can see the red is job performance and the yellow is innovation. Individuals who navigated tension, so they leaned into uncomfortable things, they allowed for tension in group settings, they let people speak up even if they had divergent points of view. Those individuals increased in job performance and in innovation. But individuals who tried to solve problems discreetly, who tried to have slack and keep the tension out of the group actually had lower job performance and lower innovation. And I think that that's maybe one of the spaces that we can lean into a little bit when we're getting into that white space, that low passion and low growth. Maybe we can start to challenge ourselves a little bit to find the tension and to use it to improve ourselves and each other. So how do we strike the match? We've got a few reflection questions here. I won't make you type in the chat unless you want to, and then I love it. But I do want to give you some time to really reflect on the what, the who, and the how that helps you get into your flame, your flourishing. So maybe thinking a little bit, if you want to open a text pad or you want to just go inward and think a little about what brings you a sense of purpose at work. What's something maybe that you'd like to learn? Maybe thinking about who makes you feel the most connected at work. And maybe it's a double doozy. You can increase learning and passion if we think about who we want to learn from, who can help us grow. And then finally, finding focus, we know, helps us increase our growth and our performance. So what are some ways that you can find focus at work? And how do you check in to recognize when somebody else might need a little infusion of passion or an infusion of learning or growth? So I started with a quote and I'll end with one. I think that thinking about burnout, not just as something that is at the end of a fire, but as something that we're constantly able to look at, knowing what the light and the darkness is around us is really, really useful. I'm going to open this space up for questions and comments. And if nobody wants to question and comment, I've put a few more reflection questions up. I'd love to hear from you either in the chat, or if you want to take yourself off mute or even put your camera back on. This is time to reflect. Tell me what's coming up for you.
Well, Tegan, what a wonderful presentation. So clear and practical. What's coming up for me is just the joy that as an organization that we take the time to do this, and how aligned it is with our work. I always love finding passion in those early childhood impulses and how they can find expression as adults. Taking the initiative to lean into it, whatever that is, and find sparks of that in others, but not wait, to get busy with it as a priority in our day, and in the way we lean into life, the continuing unfolding that's possible. There's the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Well, and the best part is that now we know it's improving our performance. So leaning into that passion is making us better at work. It's not just something to ignore. I love that.
Came up for me was the thinking about the environment of when I was on a property, like shoulder to shoulder with many experts of well-being, and how we every day learn from each other, and you could really grow as a human. There's obviously pros to working remote, and there's also many cons, that you're not surrounded by individuals who are just as passionate as you are all day long to, walk and get a coffee, and all of a sudden you're talking about this crazy idea in passing. So I think calling it out that working remote is a challenge, and you have to go out of your way to really connect with people and learn from people and grow together as a team remotely.
Absolutely. I think that's a big conversation. I actually have heard a few people talking about how remote meetings, that we should think about them as events, because it's the only time that we're able to really connect. And so how do we foster that sense of being next to an expert and walking together, but do it through some kind of Zoom platform? It's hard.
Thank you for all the questions at the end. I'm excited to kind of go back and journal and reflect.
I'm all about journaling. Pear says, what this reminds me of is the value of conscious consideration and why we do what we do. I think that's so important. Thank you, Pear. Being able to really be aware and intentional, and that's so deeply rooted in what we do with our guests. And sometimes it's really easy to slip into high growth and lose our passion, or high passion and lose our growth. So really being aware and conscious of our choices. Thank you, Pear. What else?
Hey, Tegan. Great
Hi.
to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for that very relevant presentation. I thought the slide you shared showing the study looking at how increased tension actually improved performance in different ways. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on the kinds of tension that are healthy, and then when do they become stress that's unhealthy?
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. So we can go so many directions with that. I, as a mindset guide, talk often about how there are two different kinds of stress. There's eustress and distress. And really, it's about perception. Often it's about perception, that we can experience something like excitement and worry physiologically in the exact same way. Helps us understand that, how we're looking at something and how we approach it can be the difference between whether it's distress or too much stress. For this study specifically, because this study was looking at leaders and connection and collaboration, the tension that they found, or that they were talking about, was tension between groups and people. So navigating tension, leading discussion, discourse, leading conversations where we are in fact encouraging people to have divergent points of view is a really important and I think sometimes easy to miss component of what we do. Amy Edmondson, I think if I were to suggest anything, Amy Edmondson wrote a book about psychological safety that I can send out with the slide deck that covers a lot of different ideas of how to do this and how to do it well. Google's famous study around this, I think, is the one that most people would know about.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Alex, I see you're unmuted. Did you have a question or a comment? Okay.
No, thank you. I'm taking it in. I appreciate it. These are really good questions and really good considerations.
I'll chime in with an observation. I love that you concluded on this framework at the end. In my time at Sensei, when I've been mentoring others and some of my direct reports, I've used the Ikigai framework as a way of trying to enumerate all the factors that contribute to them flourishing at work. And I kind of prefer what you've put here, because the questions and the prompts on here, it helps us shift our mindset from a passive mindset. We often feel burnt out. We often feel like there's activities that happen at work and we get swept up in it. And burnout is something that we're left with as a symptom. But the prompts that you put on the screen help us shift our mindset into something that's more active and preventative. And so we can constantly be a little bit more self-aware of what stimulates us, where we find meaning, what nourishes us, and try and preempt those symptoms of burnout before it's too late.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so well done. It was a great presentation. And I love that this is an evidence-based framework. I think this is something we can build off of. The Ikigai concept, it comes from Japan, and it's relevant for a specific culture and a specific type of philosophy. But I think, Tegan, what you put together here is evidence-based and much more in line with our philosophy.
Well, some of you know me, I'm definitely evidence-based. Catherine.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Oh, I'm echoing. Hold on. Thank you. Sorry, guys. IT challenges. Okay, I think we're good now. But what came up for me is so funny. It's just being present. And I'm trying to multitask here while I'm working, listening to your presentation. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is exactly what leads to what she's talking about. I need to be present. I need to not be trying to work while listening to this amazing information that you're delivering. And it just really triggered that. I know the root of a lot of the problems of what leads us to feeling like we're doing too much and we're trying to multitask and juggle everything because we have deadlines and all of these things that are looming. But really knowing that there's not like a fire that we're trying to put out in this moment, and I can take an hour out of my day to absorb all of this really important information. And so that really came up for me. It's like, stop working, Catherine, you're supposed to be enjoying this. And this is really key to your well-being. So I hope I'm not the only one that kind of thought that, because maybe there were others that were trying to work at the same time. And I thought, what am I doing?
There are some thumbs up, physical and Zoom thumbs up. And I think probably behind the screen, a lot of people are nodding with you as well. Catherine, I really appreciate you being honest and sharing that. I think this is where maybe the evidence framework helps us. So we know that sometimes when we're trying to do all of these things, you can think about it, that timber, just a pile of wood. But if we don't have that space to be present, to allow ourselves to really engage, without that passion, there's no flame there. And so that high growth but low passion portion of where we sometimes operate can become really dangerous, because we're trying to get it all done. We're trying to do all of the things, but we're not able to engage, and presence really helps that. And also sometimes you have to just listen to somebody talk and get a couple emails done. So I'm not mad at anyone.
No, but you know what? I think this brings up a really good point to use the fire making analogy. And sorry if I'm going to butcher this right now, right? But we all officially know that multitasking doesn't work, because we are not, our brains are not able to really focus on two things at the same time. And so if we really want to light a fire and be passionate about something, we can't start 15 fires at the same time and never actually get one to really take and burn and be amazing. And so I'm guilty as charged. I did the same thing as Catherine, and I would actually find myself pulling back and saying, similar to Catherine, what are you doing, Alex? You're either listening or you're not listening. So just, make a decision, make a choice. So I agree.
Super, super excited to hear our CEO talking about neuroscience, and that makes me really happy. You're right, our brains cannot, we task switch, and we can task switch well, but we can't do two tasks at once.
See, it stretches me to be part of such an amazingly intelligent group, and to even get a compliment that I can speak to something around neuroscience is amazing. So thank you.
Well, to expand on that simple analogy you gave, Alex, I think I thought of when you were describing it, like you can chop the wood and move the wood and pile the wood, and we do all the woodwork, and then we don't enjoy the fire that should be the enjoyable sitting around with a cocktail and talking with friends. And that felt like today, just like get through the emails, do the work, like cut the wood, and it's like, what? Ugh. Like this job is so much more than that. Like, we are a mission-driven company, we are a passion-driven company. It's not just a do the work and do the session, period.
I feel really, really grateful to be in a space where it is easy for me to go to our mission and to up my passion when I need to, because we are absolutely doing something incredible in the world, and it's nice to be able to use that. All right. Well, I am going to stop sharing my screen. That was really, really fun. Thank you so much for those of you who engaged in the chat or who came up on video. Michael, do you have any closing words or housekeeping for us?
No, I just wanted to thank you again for that talk, and to everybody on the call. We'll be sending out a recording of this session, as well as Tegan's slides. You can go back and look through them and reference them if you're experiencing any of the things that she discussed in this past hour. So yeah, thank you, Tegan.
And we all experience all of the things, so it's okay if we are. We just have tools to move in a different direction.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very
Tegan.
much. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Tegan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.